Real people, real stories, real in life. The Relentless Project. And now, your host, the man on a mission to ignite your inner fire, Ish Lopez. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Well, I appreciate you. You're the man. Born Stout. Finally got you on here. Kind of wanted to end the season with you because you got a big trip going on. So I wanted to get you before you head out. First off, how did Stout even come about?
Well, first, before I'll tell that story, but before I do, just thanks for having me on. And we were just talking, I think, off mic, but I really appreciate your podcast. And I've been on a couple of podcasts, and I have a podcast, our Stout podcast, but I just think you do the most professional job. We talked. Some of your other guests talked about it too. You know how you take it seriously, give questions beforehand. You were just everything. The way you did it, the way you scheduled it, everything was super professional. And I just think you do a great job. It's a mix between conversational kind of it's like a Joe Rogan style, just chatting with people, but you also have a direction. And I appreciate that. I think you do a better job than I do with mine of splitting those two things, right? You keep it functional. You keep it with your theme of, like you talked about, trying to inspire people, trying to give people stuff that they can take away, and also keeping it conversational. So, I just don't want to try, I guess, pat you on the back too much right at the beginning, but I just think you do a great job. So
I appreciate
thanks for doing that.
I appreciate it. It means a lot, especially coming from someone like you. You've been doing this for a while, so you've been on a few, so that means a lot to me. I do appreciate that.
Well, so back to your question, how did I start this what we are now? So I started I mean, you could go way back. Really, all my life I've been doing this. So I guess I'll take it back to that.
Yeah, when did you get started? What made you even get into MMA, jiu-jitsu, grappling?
So that's a cool story. For me, I started, I was a wrestler, and I loved wrestling. I was kind of a family, wrestling was in my family. My grandfather is a Pennsylvania Hall of Fame coach. He was a good college wrestler in the 50s, and he was, I guess, my first coach when I was a kid, and just kind of encouraged me into wrestling. And I wasn't a good wrestler when I was a kid. I wasn't one of those kids that, I mean, I lost more matches than I won. I tried, but I wasn't very good. Really until high school, I wasn't a winning wrestler. But I loved wrestling, and I remember I have a notebook where I have notes from wrestling camps I went to and clinics and stuff from when I was like 9 and 10 years old. I was taking like notes about techniques, but keep in mind at the same time I was losing 4 out of 5 of the matches I was wrestling in. So I guess at least my family encouraged me to persevere, and I ended up really loving wrestling. I think what I loved about it most was I saw that what I put in was the real results that I got out, versus like, if you're in school and there's an element of, if the teacher likes you, right? Like you get this or you get that, and it's people's judgment of you.
Guessing and tests.
Yeah. Where this was more like, I saw like, oh wow, if I learn this move, that's me. Either I'm going to learn it or not, and it's going to work in a live competition against somebody else. I kind of started seeing that when I was young, and I was like, this is beautiful. I love this. It's really honest, like people say this, they say that, they say this person's this, and I was like, it doesn't matter. The match it was so honest, and that's something I remember when I was young that I really loved. So that's why I felt, I guess just why I started really loving wrestling, and I wrestled all through high school, and I guess a really intense, and I was all over. I wrestled freestyle. I wrestled. I was a 2-time state runner-up, and just practiced all the time because I wanted to, not because anybody, my coaches and my family were supportive, but it was me, coming. And I went to college. I wrestled for Lehigh University, and just had a great experience there. Really, my coach, the assistant coach, our head coach, unfortunately passed away. Greg Strobel. He was a U.S. Olympic coach and a great college wrestling coach, but he passed away. But our assistant coach is now the head coach at Lehigh University, Pat Santoro, and just lucky enough to have him stop by this gym a lot. He was here a couple times this summer. We got to get on. We still, he's in his 50s, and I'm 45, and we still get on the mats, and he still beats me up like he did in college. So nothing's changed that way. It's stuff that we're, still always learning. It's interesting to see what he brings, new techniques and stuff. And it's just always great to see him. So he still gets on the mat with me. So anyway, after Lehigh, one of my friends, my best friend, Dan Hyman, who was a Lehigh wrestling teammate, he found on it was forums back then. It was the ADCC, the Ad Combat Forum. It was pre-social media. It was 20, almost 20.
Dating yourself
Yeah,
now.
like 22 years ago. So we were finishing up our senior year in college. We had competed in the NCAA tournament, and we were, it's in the spring, and I had a business, and I was putting flyers out for my business, and I got a call from Dan. It's my first cell phone too. This is really dating me. This is back when this wasn't even a flip phone. This was a big old cell phone. And I was on putting out flyers, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go to Brazil?" And I just said, "Yes, I do." But I didn't know why he was asking me. And it ended up he had seen on the Ad Combat Forum. Hollis Gracie wanted wrestlers to come down and help him with takedowns. So to kind of condense this story, we went 2 days after I graduated from college. He went a day before me, but we went down to Cuiabá in Brazil, and we lived with Hollis Gracie for that summer. And we ended up going to Rio with Hollis, Rio de Janeiro, and that's how I started jiu-jitsu. And I was teaching him wrestling. He's become, he had a great career and was a good wrestler. Actually, did some international wrestling tournaments. So I was happy that I guess I was his first wrestling coach. Dan and I were, and we stayed in Brazil there. And I wasn't good enough at wrestling. I was a good wrestler, but I wasn't a great wrestler. And I saw jiu-jitsu as a way to keep learning and keep, at first that's just what I saw it as a way to keep learning this technique that I fell in love with. And I came back from Brazil, and I got a job. I was working as like the lowest thing you can be on the New York Stock Exchange. And I was in New York, and I started training at Henzo Min Academy there. And then I got another job in that area, like a different job, and I kept training at Henzo's. And that was basically how I started. We do have an interview with Hollis Gracie on my podcast and also on our Instagram. If you want to hear Hollis talking like some of his version of that story about how he met me,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So you got invited right after college, like college kid going to Brazil. Have you ever been out of the country before that?
I had,
Okay.
I was I think the second person in even my extended family to be out of the country. We grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, rural area. I'd gone to, kind of made this wrestling trip happen when I was in high school. I went to Russia for wrestling, and that was quite an adventure. I got to do that, and that was really the only time I guess I had been out of the country, out of the U.S. other than Canada, is when I went to Russia for a wrestling trip. But it was just a great trip, the Brazil trip. Other than the main thing was meeting Hollis, some other of his family, the Gracie family, and starting to learn this like amazing art that they teach jiu-jitsu. It was just a great trip. It was when we went to Cuiabá was amazing. We went to these cool parties, just a different culture. Cuiabá is near Bolivia. It's near the Pantanal. So I got to see that. And then we went to Rio when Brazil won the World Cup. So that was a fun time.
Okay. Story for another time. Huh?
Yeah. Hollis's mom would take us around to the parties, and it was wild and it was fun. So that was lifetime experience that I'll never forget, and I'm glad I did it.
So you were training at Henzo in New York. What brought you out this way?
So a little bit of before that, so I went to New York, and I trained at Henzo's. I met Sean Williams and John Danaher. When I first met them, they were both brown belts. So they've both since become, I would say, genuine like legends of coaching of the sport. Especially John Danaher. I think Sean Williams sometimes doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, but John, well deserved, is pretty famous now, and he's just a phenomenal person and coach. And I got to meet them, and that's what really. And Henzo himself also. Henzo was really open minded. I remember one of the first days I met him. I was showing, I think, Sean Williams or somebody in the room in New York in the blue base. That's now since become like the famous blue basement. It's produced UFC champions and the greatest jiu-jitsu no-gi competitor of all times and many others. So, so I was in there, and I was I was teaching a single leg to somebody, I guess. And Henzo was like, "Hey," comes over to me and says, "Hey, can I learn that? Can you show me that and what you're doing?" And I was like starstruck, kind of a little bit, like just. And I was like, "I guess so." Here, I showed him, and that like made a big impression on me. I was like, and so I was like, "This is my team. This is who I need to be with." And I always think that's one of the best skills I've had in my combat sports career, was being able to recognize and find good coaching early in their coaching. I mean, I guess Pat Santoro was already a known coach and stuff, and so was Greg Strobel. But I mean, like, I felt like I've always been good at that, is identifying great coaches and just kind of like trying to attach myself to them as much as I can and learn from them. And Sean Williams and John Danaher were really the two that I influenced most my jiu-jitsu career. And I've gotten to work with Sean a lot. I've been so privileged with Sean Williams over the years, and we're still great friends, and we train as much as we can. He's in Nashville now. He has an academy in Nashville, and he has a good online presence too, if you want to learn technique from him. But so that's kind of how I started in New York, and then I moved to Costa Rica after that. It was sort of a whim, I read my journal from that Brazil trip. I kind of kept the notes and jiu-jitsu notes, and also just kind of general journal while I was in Brazil with Hollis. And one night I just was kind of flipping through it just to see, I hadn't had it out for a year or two, and it's a couple of years, I think 2 years maybe. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to move to." I just decided I want to move somewhere. I was working in New York. I was working a corporate job. It was a decent job, but I just wasn't happy. But I also wanted to keep doing jiu-jitsu. So they told me, Sean Williams and some of the other guys were like, "Yeah, there's a Henzo guy in Costa Rica." And I was like, "Oh, Costa Rica sounds great. I want to check that out." And so I'd known someone from Costa Rica, and I contacted them and ended up just going down there kind of on a whim. And long story short, I ended up staying there for about 5.5 years. And I trained with a Hyan Gracie. It was Henzo's brother, Hyan Gracie's black belt. Good guy. I trained with him while I was down there. And eventually I opened a little school down there. It was kind of like the first true mixed martial arts school in Costa Rica, under the guidance of, Sean Williams, who I was still, in touch with very often and stuff. But that's kind of, and then I got a job with Sean in LA. And that was I needed to, I was in Costa Rica for 5 years, and I think I was a purple belt when I moved to California. And I did that because I wanted to compete more and I wanted to learn from Sean. But I got to work for him also, which was great. I learned a lot about, things about running a school, about teaching, learned a lot of jiu-jitsu, and I got to compete quite a bit. So that was my path.
Networking is so important, like, and building relationships. And I've always known that, and I've always kind of believed that to be true. But when I started this podcast and like started talking to people, and just, I realized how much like building those relationships and surrounding yourself with people who you want to be like, I don't want to say be like, but like they say, if you surround yourself by a group of people, you tend to gravitate towards what they do, right? And I remember I was at an event, Lou's like super fights. I just went to go watch, and he's like, "Hey, dude, like because you do the podcast, you want to like narrate? I'm like, dude, I don't narrate jiu-jitsu. Like, I've only been doing it for about 3 years. Like, I can't narrate jiu-jitsu. Oh, just get on the mic. Just get on the mic. So I'm like, I'm plugging Christian Schaefer. I'm plugging Stout on the mic and stuff. And after it, Cody comes up, Cody Gamble. He's like, hey, dude, you're the podcast guy, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, I have a podcast. I'm a guy. Yeah. He's like, oh, dude, you gotta come to the Mat Factory and cross train over here. I'm like, sure, all right, dope. Yeah, like people just start reaching out and stuff. They're like, even Cody's like, hey, after my fight in Erie, like you want to get together, like come to the Mat Factory, or I'll come to Style, like whatever. I'm like, yeah, like but like it creates this network.
Yeah.
And then you realize how tight the jiu-jitsu community is. Like, for example, you're like, I know a guy in Costa Rica. I'm gonna go move over there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you were accepted.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, all right.
Well, that's why I could live there for, that was what really kept me there, was that community of jiu-jitsu, that I got to know people right away. And that was really what it was. That's the only reason I stayed there for five and a half years, because I met people through jiu-jitsu. So
How do you think wrestling impacts your jiu-jitsu style?
it was really influential. I guess when I first started, you want to play to your strengths, right? And especially if you're a competitor. So you look at it from two angles, right? Like, I had this asset, especially back then. The majority of, I was kind of maybe like one of the first waves of good wrestlers that got into jiu-jitsu seriously. And I mean, there were probably guys before me. I don't want to say I'm like the first or anything, but I was one of the first waves of, it was before before it was popular, right? Like it is now. And I think that my wrestling was my strength, and I played into that, right? Initially, I wanted to use that wrestling to win, and my advantages were takedowns, base, and being able to kind of maintain top position to some degree. And I really I played that, and then but I also started to realize that I didn't want to be just a wrestler that did jujitsu. Kind of, I wanted to actually kind of feel the essence of jiu-jitsu and do jiu-jitsu as a jiu-jitsu player. So I don't know, I concentrated on the bottom position. I remember when I came to, I guess, John Danaher when I was a purple belt. I was doing a private lesson with him, and I said, John, like, my guard's not very, very good. And he's like, mate, nobody's born with a good guard. Some people are fast, some people are quick. And he's like, nobody has a good guard naturally. It's not an intuitive thing. And I was like, wow, that makes me feel better. And he gave me a bunch of drills that they were excellent, like everything he does, it's really impactful. But he gave me a bunch of drills that day, and I did them for 6 months probably. I had a roommate. That was when I was right when I moved to Costa Rica, and we got a roommate, and we put puzzle mats out in the front of our like garage area, and we drill it every day in addition to like going to practice. And I feel like I've become, like, I think I'm just as good at jiu-jitsu, if not better at this point, because wrestling, as you get older, the injuries, the bigger movements, the athleticism fades a little bit. I think it's, I've felt that a little bit. And I think that jiu-jitsu, smaller movements, like, I don't want to say more technical, but I think there's more technique maybe in jiu-jitsu, just because there's more things that can go on. It's a bigger field. Like, there's submissions, which we don't have in wrestling. So I think you can learn wrestling for the rest of your life, right? I'm not saying wrestling's not technical or you can't, but I think there's a little bit more. Jiu-jitsu is a bigger field to learn. So, so I like that. So I kind of play on that now. So, yeah, I think wrestling, on what it really influenced me, kind of to be more concise on your question, was it influenced me the way I train. I think especially 20 years ago when I started jiu-jitsu, I think wrestling had a better, in some ways better, uh, idea of how to structure practices. And I'd been out to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. I'd been with, like I said, my head coach was an Olympic coach. I'd just been around really elite wrestling coaches for many years, the best, some of the best in the world. And I think from that, I learned the structure, the training methods, the attitude, of training, and I think wrestling gave me an edge with that. I think was the main thing. Now I think there's some things that jiu-jitsu does better than some wrestling. I think that, and this is a broad statement because there's terrible wrestling coaches and terrible jiu-jitsu coaches, and there's really great ones in both. But I think broadly, I think that uh, there, at least when I wrestled, there was this element of wrestling that was like you just go hard all the time, and I think jiu-jitsu didn't have that, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think you need to go 100% as far as like physical output all the time when you're training. Um, on the flip side, I think sometimes jiu-jitsu was too flowy, and they didn't have that explosiveness and that pop, which I think that's an asset, and you see that more in modern jiu-jitsu. I think recently. So
Wrestling kind of gives you like a sharper mindset. Would you say,
um, I
or not sharper? I guess because like Wilkins explained it the perfect way when I had him on. He said, wrestlers tend to see a door and go, "This is the door I want. I'm going to go through this door."
yeah
Or in jiu-jitsu, if the door is locked, you try another door. You continue to try other doors, where wrestlers tend to go, "Oh, this is the door I want. This is the door I'm going to pick." And then they try to make that door happen in a
yeah.
sense of like a move or a technique you're trying or something. Would you say you're more aggressive in wrestling? So now that's bleeding over to jiu-jitsu? Because you see modern jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff, and it's like, it's no longer the flow stuff. It's just,
No.
they're after each other
And
now.
they're athletes too now. I
Yeah.
mean, that's. I think there's not that there weren't great athletes before, but I think there's more great athletes coming into it. I like that analogy, but I would take it back to like, I think it's the nature of the sports a little bit too. Like the door. Let's take the door thing. Like kind of what I just said before. I think jujitsu has more options, right? Wrestling, because of the rule set, because of they want to drive excitement for the fans. They're like, you have to go. Like think of freestyle. They put you on a shot clock if you don't score in the
Oh,
first.
yeah.
So like that's a little bit different. The rule set drives that mentality a little bit. Whereas jujitsu, the matches are not always, but generally a little bit longer. There's not as much, there's no periods in jujitsu. Generally, it's just a match. It's one long thing. So I think that in addition to there being more options in jujitsu, right? There's more things going on, right? Submissions, best example, but I think that's what drives that. Whereas wrestling's like you have to get a takedown. The guy's standing in front of you, and you have to get a takedown. You have, and in freestyle, it's like you almost have to get a shot or a counter shot or some kind of a counter, and that's it narrows it a little bit. What you can do, so jiu-jitsu is a little more broad. So I think that drives it, and I think they're both. I think the analogy, since my son plays is a soccer player, and he plays futsal, right? So it's a different game. It has a little different pace and things like that. So it's just slightly different rule set, and that drives the mentality, right? I think that's my opinion on that.
Before we get this Stout PGH, just popped into my head as you're saying that. Hunter on 247 talked about jiu-jitsu going to the Olympics. If it's something that people foresee.
Yeah.
In your experience, I mean, I'd say you're an expert in jiu-jitsu and everything now with everything you've done and built. What do you see, or what are your thoughts of jiu-jitsu going to the Olympics? Do you think that's something you'll see within the next 10 years, or what do you think is holding that from happening?
I think the Olympic. I don't. I'm not an expert on this, to be honest. I don't know what all the politics are involved in the Olympics, and I know there are a lot of them from people who do know about that kind of thing that I've talked to, particularly wrestling people. Um, I I have mixed feelings on it, actually. I think that um, jujitsu is really, I think one of the cool things about jujitsu is it's very entrepreneurially driven, and it's kind of independent of because it's independent of a lot of, I guess you could say, like, I'm trying to find a better word in this, but politics, right? Like if you're in the Olympics, you have to adhere to this, and these people that don't know anything about jujitsu, maybe their interests don't care about the jujitsu. Like look at wrestling. Like the way, wrestling was one of the original Olympic sports. They were trying to do away with wrestling in the Olympics. Like this just happened like a few years ago. I don't know if
I
you
do
remember.
remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, and it really, I mean, I've always was a fan of the Olympics coming up, but it really, that and some, some other things about the way they put sports in the Olympics really kind of soured me on the whole thing. And whereas, you got organizations like ADCC. I think they're doing a great job. I don't love the rule set. I think there needs to be changes in the rule set. But as far as like being an independent organization that plays by their own rules and their own things, I love that, and I think the fans appreciate that. I think that's why it's so popular and growing in popularity. So I have mixed feelings about do I want it to be in the Olympics, right? Like I don't know. I think it would showcase it more. But I think that would bring a different element into it, and I'm not sure that that's the best thing for jiu-jitsu. I don't know.
As much as this might hurt me, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think the goal is to get jiu-jitsu showcased, right?
yeah,
And we see Olympics, and we're like, the entire world is watching, right?
yeah.
But then, that's the only reason. That's like one of the main reasons people would agree with the Olympics, I would say. But again, that comes with the sport is growing. It's
Yeah.
growing. I feel like you're gonna nip it. You're almost gonna like kill that growth by just throwing it into the Olympics,
And,
because as you said, ADCCs, they're doing so good in raising the awareness. And then even that, how many different shows come to just Pittsburgh alone?
yeah,
Like, think about how many shows come here to highlight jiu-jitsu and MMA.
yeah. I think it's developing on its own path
Yeah.
too. It's a newer thing. And there's probably been you could look back to, early 1900s, late 1800s, and seemed like there were some similar things going on with shows and professional fighting and things like that. And it probably went through a cycle. But it revitalized in the late mid '90s, and it's continuing to go on. But it really is developing on its own path, and I think, like anything, there's historical trends and there's individuals that have made a big difference in the development of jiu-jitsu. I think one of them is John Danaher, a guy I talked about, made a huge difference in the way jiu-jitsu's developed. The other people like Moja Seam that runs ADCC, I think did a great thing in promoting that, so yeah, I would like to see it develop on its own path, I think, rather than having some political people that don't really care about jiu-jitsu in some Olympic committee dictating what direction the sport's going to go.
Yeah, I would have to agree. What brought you to the Steel City?
That's kind of a. I guess I was competing and training at Sean Williams, like I should, kind of picking up where I left off in LA, and my family's from Western Pennsylvania, and so this was 2008. The crash happened, the economic crash. LA was, it was getting tough I was working at the school. I was working 2 or 3 other jobs. I was a bouncer. I was working at a restaurant in the mornings. I was working for
Used to
Sean's.
bounce.
Yeah, a little bit. And so yeah, and I'm, obviously not a very scary person, but they figured if it actually did go down, I could fight a little bit, I guess. But I didn't bounce a lot, but I bounced some. I was doing that in LA for about a year, I guess. And then I worked at a restaurant, but it was getting tough out there. And Sean and his partner were, there was a little bit of disagreement there at the school, and my family wanted me to come back and work for. At the time, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was when the oil and gas boom happened. So I came back for them. It was kind of an intermission. I was just kind of like, what am I going to do now? And I got back to Pennsylvania, and I was married. Also, I got married a year before that, and I moved back to Pennsylvania. And I was like, I got to train jiu-jitsu. Like, there's not a lot here. I would go out to State College. I actually met Lou Armazzani, was a blue belt. He was training at a gym in State College at the time when I came back but I mean, I was only, I think, 29 or 30 at that time, and I was still, I still wanted to compete, still wanted to do jiu-jitsu, and I just didn't. I was driving all over the place, driving out to State College, driving down here, and there was just nothing like what I was used to. I was going out to New York once a month, I was driving out to Henzo's in New York training, and I uh, I decided I'd start a little gym, and I think Mike told that story a little bit
Yeah.
on his podcast too, on your podcast. But I started a little gym in Lawrenceville. And the big thing initially was really for me to have somewhere to train. But it was, a lot of the guys weren't very experienced, like I was used to in LA and New York and stuff. So it was a little bit of a road building up the team and stuff. And then eventually I realized that I always kind of knew, but I started realizing I could do it full time, and I tried to learn. I really applied. I looked at successful academy owners, and I learned from them, and I got hired business consultants, and I was like, I got a bunch of my friends to give me some money to because I didn't have any money at the time,
It's the
extra
way to
money,
do it.
and started. I was like, I'm gonna make this into something, and I want to see. My goal was I want to see if I can make something that's a sustainable business. I can make a living for me and my family, and it can be sustainable as far as like long term, and I can have real jujitsu, build competitors, have myself still. I was still competing at the time in a lot. I was fighting MMA and I was competing in jujitsu at the black belt level at that year. So that was my initial motivation for, and I had never lived in Pittsburgh. That was just the closest big city that I thought I could, build up a team and train with people. So that's kind of how I decided to start and why I started and some of the things that guided me at first.
So your motivation was just to train and
Mostly,
find
yeah.
a place to train.
Yeah, because I was working full time, for my oil and gas company that my family was involved in, and yeah, I just wanted to keep doing jujitsu mainly, and then I did. I thought wouldn't be being honest if I thought there wasn't a possibility of doing it as a career, as far as having a school, because I knew other people that did that and they were successful, and I kind of leaned on them to learn at first how to do it, and I didn't always do exactly what they did, but I tried to learn from them.
Did you have your black belt when you started that Lawrenceville school?
I got my black belt right around when I start like that. I think I'd started it. I told Henzo I was going to start the school, and we were Henzo Gracie. We were just Henzo Gracie Pittsburgh initially, and I told Henzo I was going to start it when I was a brown belt. And I think a couple months after that, I got my black belt. Some of the real early guys like Mike went out with me too when I got my black belt, and Mike, Logan, Lance Thompson, they got belt promoted too because I wasn't promoting people. I was a brown belt, and we went out. Like I said, I'd go out to Henzo's like once a month still, and Henzo promoted me out there along with John was there and Sean was there and Daniel Gracie was there and all of my teachers, and I got promoted out there. I think it was maybe I want to say like 3 months after I started or 4 months after I started the little school here. And as soon as I got my black belt, I was like, I don't. I had like when I got my brown belt, I was like, yeah, I'm a brown belt. Just for sure. I felt. And Sean Williams gave me my brown belt in L.A. And but when I got my black belt from Henzo, I was like nervous. All right, I was like, oh, can
I
I?
have an expectation to uphold now, right?
That's right. Like, maybe you felt like that when you got like your blue belt, or you
So when I got my blue belt, I thought I was like, I got it, like, because I was under the Adopt-A-Cop program,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, I got it. And then I realized when I got it, it meant nothing. All it meant was I had a green light on my back because like guys were coming after me. They see me like, oh, that's a 230-pounder. He's a blue belt now. He can defend himself. So I was getting attacked from every direction. I'm like, I remember this funny story. I come into class. It was a fundamentals class. There's a kid with a white belt, no stripes, and I'm paired with him. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, cool. So usually when I get paired with someone like that, they usually ask questions and stuff like that. This kid isn't asking questions. He's whooping my ass, and I'm
He's a
like,
white. You say he's a white belt?
white belt.
Okay.
And I'm like, I can't be that off today.
Yeah.
I can't be that off today.
Yeah.
Well, we all line up. I think it was Logan. He comes up. He's like, why do you have a white belt on? He's like, oh, I left my belt at home, so I just grabbed one. I look at him. I'm like, how long you been training? He's like, oh, dude, I'm a purple belt. I've also wrestled my whole life. I'm like, get the I knew something was up. This dude was white. I'm like, damn it. I'm sitting here trying to be like humble, and then by the end of it, I'm like, I gotta try and kill this guy. Like, fucking left his belt. So
Yeah.
it's funny. The belts don't really mean anything, but they really do because they kind of show the work you've put in. So yeah, when I got my blue belt, I felt so good, but I was like, I don't think I should have this right now. You know, like. Because I see like blue belts on the fight team.
Yeah.
They're
Christian
savage.
Schaefer.
Yeah, like
Well,
Exactly.
I wanted to promote him, but he just wants to compete one more time, like in Worlds, but that's an example.
don't tell him.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, like I see Christian Schaefer, and it's like I'm gonna need knee surgery or leg surgery after going with him, like and you know Britt when she was a blue belt, she was doing some insane stuff, and I'm like do I? And I always have this thing where I compare myself to people, and then Mike, another good thing Mike said, he's like, yeah, but compare yourself to when you first started.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd destroy that dude.
Yeah.
I would destroy that dude, 100%. But yeah. So you got your black belt, and you started this Lawrenceville school.
Yeah. Well, when I got I felt the same way, like you said. When I was just like I don't know if I deserve this, and I don't put much stock in belts. I mean, this is like I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to all the students here too. You guys know this. I'm not a big.
You said it before.
I'm not a big belt person. I don't. I think there's as many bad things about colored belts as there are, good things. But anyway, I got my black belt, and I felt pressure because all my teachers, Henzo, Sean, Daniel, John, were all there, and I felt pressure, so I was like, I got to compete, and I went right away into like black belt competition, and I wasn't like phenomenally successful. I wasn't like one of these guys like, oh, that's the next superstar. But I had quite a bit of success at like high level, some success at a high level as a black belt, and I was like, okay, I'm a black belt, right? Like I then felt secure. That helped
kind
me.
of solidified that position for you.
And I was so proud that Henzo and the rest of my other teachers thought that I was a black belt. And that's really all it meant to me. It wasn't like I was comparing myself to other people, but because I was still in my 30s and I was, they saw me as a wrestler and a competitor. And I was like, man, I got to compete. I got to prove this out. So, I had some competitions. I fought MMA a little bit, amateur MMA. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm a real black belt, I guess.
It's a crazy thought too, because like all your teachers are black belts, right?
Yeah.
So like now you're like you enter into this realm where you're like, I'm still learning so much from you guys, but we have the same color on our waist. Like that's a crazy thought to me.
Well, I would never equate myself just because of my belt color. Like
sure,
I mean, I know what you're saying.
But like people will see that. Like if people saw all of you standing in the same room, they're like, oh, they're all black belts. They're at the same level, right? But it's like
no.
Like you put all the blue belts in your gym together. Not the same. Not the same thing.
No.
Like a belt is just like Mike broke it down so well. I wish I'm going to cut that and post it for people because people always ask me like, what does it take to get your blue belt? And I'm like, dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I showed up. I trained hard, but Mike put it down in real like, he said, if you can learn the techniques and apply the techniques consistently over time, like that's what this that's usually what I see. And I'm like, oh man, that all kind of makes sense. Like if you're able to like, I don't know how like explain that to people, like, dude, don't worry about your belt. Worry about showing up every day. Worry about training hard. Worry about being consistent in your technique application. Like everything else is going to come. The same with when you started your business, you probably were like, I got to have permits or I got to have this or I got to have mats on the wall. Like, but if you digest it day by day, tomorrow the mats come in.
Yeah.
We're going to put them down. The next day, I'm going to put the logo up. The next day, you do the little things. When you're sitting down on the Relentless Project podcast, thinking about it, you're like, I have 4 locations in the Pittsburgh area that are freaking dope. None of them are half-assed either.
No.
Like, they're all huge, awesome gyms.
Yeah.
Like, how does that feel for you? Like, do you ever sit back? I asked Mike, do you ever sit back and think like, dude, this started in a little closet in Lawrenceville. Now look.
Yeah, I mean it's been. I'll talk more about that later if you want, like about the business part of it and stuff. But I would go back to like just to kind of touch on because I listened to that what Mike said and I thought that was excellent like guidance as far as somebody saying, what do I need to do? I think there's a thing though now where people because of school and how maybe I don't know, like they want feds, they want this is the step and the step and the step, and then I become this. And I personally don't see things that way. I think it's different for everybody. Your path is not going to be the same as somebody else's, right? And you have to I think you have to recognize that. As that's true, all that stuff Mike said 100%, and people should use that for guidance. But I always say, like, don't use a belt to compare. It's not comparative. You know what's comparative is going on a mat and grappling with somebody. If you want to compare yourself to if you want to compare your jiu-jitsu to somebody, get on a mat and train with them. It's easy. That's what's the beauty of this. That's what going back to what I said, the honesty of wrestling. That's what I love about this sport. Anybody can say, oh yeah, somebody gave me a black belt or whatever they say. Get on the mat and roll. Then like that's the beauty of this sport. But I would say everybody everybody's a little different too. Like it depends on your goals. Like if I'm in charge of promoting you, I'm not going to promote you the same as I will. I know what you do for your line of work. I know you're an athletic guy. I know you have a lot of experience, and I'm not going to promote you the same as a 54-year-old guy that just started jiu-jitsu, right? It's not going to be the same path. And I think for me, like when I got my black belt, it was just, like I said, it meant a lot to me because Henzo, Sean, John, Daniel thought should be a black belt. And that's it. I didn't say like, oh, I'm better than this brown belt, because there were brown belts that could beat me. I'm sure of it, and I'd submitted black belts when I was a purple belt. Like it just, that's the way it is. And I didn't look at it as a comparison, because that's what competition's for.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like it's the same way with the gym. I think like training, like lifting weights. I'm strong. Okay. Go under a bench, go under a squat rack.
Yeah.
Like that's going to show you how strong you are. You can talk about how strong you are. You can say, I've been at the gym for 20 years lifting, and you get that all the time. Oh, back in my day. It's like, well, show me where you're at.
Yeah.
Same with jiu-jitsu. It's like, hey, yeah, you're a blue belt. You're a 10-year blue belt. But like, where are you at on the mat?
Yeah.
Show me. Like, and that's true. I guess that's a good way to put it, your own path. Like the belts matter in your journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, where are you in your journey?
Not comparatively.
Not comparatively.
Yeah.
But comparatively into your journey. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because you'd almost be doing me a disservice if you're like, oh, I'm just going to promote him because he's been here a while.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, he hasn't improved. He hasn't been here consistently.
I've had some people like that, unfortunately, and it bothers me actually, and I feel like I somewhat failed them. But I mean, it takes both. You can't blame everything on your teacher, and you can't. And the teacher does have some responsibility to keep you improving. So yeah, I think on not on the flip side, but just to add something to that, I don't think that just whoever wins in jiu-jitsu is the whole thing either. Like that almost sounds contradictory, but it's not. Like I'll try to explain it. I'll try to maybe just kind of unpack what I mean by that. I think that their skill and knowledge are different. First of all, there's some intersection in the circle there, but they are a little bit different. And as you get older, like I'm 45 now, there are physical, like for me now, I'm not real old or anything, but it's like injuries accumulate, I think, and that's been an issue for me. But I think that it's not all about who wins in a specific rule set match. That's not the only thing I evaluate. I mean, in some ways you could be better at jiu-jitsu, more broadly skilled, and lose a match to somebody who's maybe just better at one thing. So I think you have to take that into account as well when you're talking about your own journey, when you're thinking about your jiu-jitsu. Like maybe you don't beat somebody that's 220 pounds and it's like Logan that's 29 and trained since he was 13. Maybe you don't beat that person, but maybe you're as good at jiu-jitsu as the person. Logan's maybe not a good example, but like maybe you're, because he's very knowledgeable and skilled too. But maybe
Logan can invert.
Oh yeah,
that blows my mind. I can't do it to save my life, and he's over here.
He's a beast.
I'm like, but that's a good way to put it. It's not always about winning, but it's about growth, and growth isn't a win at your match. How did you handle your match? Were you poised? Did you Did you defend yourself appropriately? Like growth is so people see growth as like and success. What is success? It's such a intangible word.
And I think that's what I meant. Like you said
Yeah.
it better actually. Like what are it depends also on your goals, right? Like
Yeah.
what is your goal with jiu-jitsu? Is it to win a tournament? Well, that's going to be different than your goal being to be an expert in MMA jiu-jitsu. My goal is to be a gi world champion. Okay, well that's a lot different than if I want to be a professional MMA fighter. It's going to be different, right? Like your skill set's going to be different. Your knowledge base, you're going to have a little bit different knowledge too, different emphasis on what you're doing. So, I think that's stuff you have to take into account also with jiu-jitsu.
You heard it here, folks. What are some of your like, for example, the building of what made you had the strip right from Lawrenceville? You came to the strip.
Yeah.
What made you want to like? Now we got to be over here. Was it you just found so much growth, or was it did you want the growth? You understand?
Both. Yeah, I think I understand. I think you're asking about like, did the growth drive
Yes.
me or did I drive the growth?
Yes.
And I think the answer is both. Like I know you wanted to touch on some of the business stuff of the school. And I mean, first of all, not to, just be all boastful, but just to be honest, like our school is very big for anywhere, not for Pittsburgh, for like, the United States. And don't really want to share like numbers and stuff
Yeah,
here
no
now, but
numbers.
it's not really where we need to be. But we have a very large member base. And I will say this, it's probably a factor of 5 or 6 more than the next one in the area, right? Like as far as our membership base. And it was both. I mean, I think, people always ask, a lot of times people ask me because of that, they're like, oh, I want advice on business. And it's been tough for me. I've thought a lot about it. And I think that there's an element of luck. And I'm not saying that out of trying to be like false humility or anything. Any business that you do, I think there's an element of luck.
Right
And
time,
timing,
right place,
right place, right skills, right. I think there's some guy on the internet or a book I read. I can't remember the guy's name, but yes, I was that guy Scott Adams, like a political commentator. But he talks about like a talent stack. I think you have to have the right. You don't have to be the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world. You don't have to be the best business. You have to have the right talent stack to succeed in it. And that there's an element of luck to that, I guess, too. But yeah, the growth of it was driven partly by just the growth of the industry, right? Like the growth of the sports or the jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, even Thai boxing. They're all growing. And there's some that I rode that wave, right? I was there and I think picking Pittsburgh was really lucky. There wasn't a lot of competition or good competition. I think the timing I had was really lucky. I think if I could say just a quick advice, 2 things as far as like what contributed to the success that wasn't just pure luck like that, I would say, and I guess there is an element to luck to this, surrounding yourself with good people. Like you've had a lot of them on this podcast. And that's the number one thing, honestly, and was that luck kind of because you don't who you get, but I think I also tried to cultivate relationships like you talked about at the beginning of this podcast too, relationships with good people. I think that's was one of the biggest things. And then the other thing's consistency, just showing up. I mean, it's been 14 years almost, like people say, oh, you have these gyms and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I've been working at it a lot for 14 years. And I don't know how hard other people work. I just know that it takes up what I do, balancing this with, I think you're a father too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think balancing that and the business of these gyms, which we have, I think 12 full-time employees now, and maybe if you count part-time, like 40, and something around there. And it's I think 40 part-time. Some are really part-time, but managing that and just the growth of this and kind of keeping it driving forward. It takes all my time, and it's something I'm consistently working at in addition to training myself. I mean, I've always kept relatively active. I mean, I'm not the most active competitor, but I didn't compete this year, but I competed, I mean, as much as anybody else in the Pittsburgh area, probably more, at least more at a, maybe Chris Dempsey, maybe he's been more active last few years for sure. But overall, over the last 14 years, I've been active the whole time at high level. I'm not doing local tournaments and stuff. I'm doing big tournaments in jiu-jitsu. I fought MMA in 2010, amateur, and just training, keeping my own skill level, growing and trying to learn. Like I learn stuff every week, both skill and knowledge.
I think
So,
that helps with the school aspect too. Like if you see the guy in charge still after it, it
yeah,
kind of makes you like, I got to get after it too. He's still doing it. Like, because you can easily just be like, I'm done. You guys run it. I'm just gonna
yeah,
collect my check and stay home. But no, you're in here. I see you in here. So when you got to coach classes, I'll see you coaching classes.
yeah.
I remember thinking like, this dude, this is Stout. Like, what the hell is he doing coaching? And you still do it.
I love
Like, it's
I
awesome.
don't love it every day. Like I'm not in
Yeah.
every day I love doing everything I do, but I really do still I still am passionate about it. I still like coaching. I still like teaching. I'm spread pretty thin as far as teaching at this point because I've like you said, I have 4 locations. I bounce around to all of them. I've scheduled teaching every night except Monday, and I often teach that night too, at different locations. And I teach during the day. I run practices, so I do it a lot. I'm on the mat a lot still, in addition to everything else. But I don't know. It is a lot, and I've gotten you get in that busy trap too, and you get too much stuff going on. I'm sure you.
Oh, I know all about it,
I know what
especially
you
right
have
now.
going
Yeah.
on too. You have a lot of stuff yourself going on. What you have your career. Can we say what
Law
you do?
enforcement?
Yeah,
Yeah,
law
law
enforcement.
enforcement.
Yeah, I didn't know whether that was.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
I try not to mention any other specific, but law enforcement.
Yeah, you're
realtor.
you do, and,
Yeah.
and your dad, you
Yeah.
and you train a lot, and you're in great shape. Like kind of the same thing. Kind of, I think we're pretty similar in that. Like we have a lot of stuff going on, and it's good, but I think you can get too much into that. I'm actually trying to like dial
Step
that
back.
back a little bit.
Especially once you've built something that can like sustain itself,
Yeah.
it's almost important to step back and like see it.
Yes,
You know what I mean? To
yes.
see the whole picture and see,
Yes.
because when you're in it, it's hard to see the whole picture.
It really is.
Yeah, you got to step back, let it kind of run itself, and be like, is it sustainable? Is it doing good?
Yeah.
Did I hire the right people? Do I have the right people? Like, it's important to step back.
And I think that overview is. I'll touch on one other thing that I was going to mention, but like you asked, what are some of the things that I'm driving the growth or it's driving. I think that is that's the thing that I do, right? Like nobody else in this organization has the full overview like I do, and I'm the one that has that responsibility, and that like everybody else has. Some people like Mike do a lot of, Mike does a lot of stuff. Logan does a lot of admin stuff and a lot they all do stuff, but I'm the one that has the overview of everything. And I honestly don't think any students or anybody else sees that. Only I get to see that overview. And it's a lot, there's a lot of different moving parts and stuff going on. But that's what I feel now is my responsibility you articulate it perfect. Like take that 1,000-foot view and direct from there. But I also, like I said, I also still jump in, and that's into the fray and teaching and little stuff in, and that's what I have. I do want to, maybe step back from that a little bit.
Well, that's important in any industry as well. Like you see, like especially in policing, not in my department, but in a lot of departments, you see the chief who is supposed to be the face of the department. Step back, make sure everything's running how it's supposed to. That's why you have your lieutenants, your sergeants, your captains. That's why you have that rank structure so that you can sit back and make sure things are running how they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
When you have a chief who is reading people's reports, like they're so micromanaging, they're so into it that they're like, you're reading a rookie's reports. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you manage everything when you're trying to run everything?
Yeah.
It's hard.
You can't.
And then you see there's so much frith in those departments, and it's like, step back. And I speak with other cops and other agents, and I'm like, you gotta talk to him, man. To be like, have a man-to-man conversation with him. Like, it doesn't have to be all official. Be like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, what makes you feel that you can't trust your guys? Like, that's a conversation that needs to be had in that instance. And CEOs who, there's one thing to like go into to your business and talk with people, see how things are going, and there's another thing to try and do people's jobs as a CEO.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you didn't hire the right people if you can't allow them to do their job.
Yeah.
And I think you've done a great job in the sense of picking picking the right people for the right positions
Yeah.
and putting them
Oh,
in the
thank
right
you.
places. Just how stout fights.
Yeah.
Stout fights are one of the I go to many competitions kind of to watch and
Yeah.
to be involved in stuff, and I don't see many run as smooth as stout fights.
And that's Andy Anderson. I mean, I helped him at the beginning. Now it's all him, like he does it all himself. So Andy Anderson, he's one of the he works here. He's one of the coaches. He's a competitor.
He gave Wilkins a Charlie horse a cramp the last episode.
Because he was so mad at him. Oh, they're hilarious. They're good friends, but they get in heated arguments sometimes. But it's funny. But I think going back to what you said about driving growth versus it being driven by me, why I open new locations is exactly that, because I have people that are ready and want to go to work full time. That's the main reason that I open new locations. Monroeville, we opened. Vince is leading that, and then Zach is leading Bridgeville.
Yeah, I was a little sad. I was like, it was like salty, man, because Front Desk Sensei just disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm like,
he's been managing Bridgeville for about a year now.
Yeah.
But that's really why I open new locations. It's also like, I think it grows the sport, and I want to now. That's one of my goals, is I want to grow and really. I don't know if this is the right word, but really, I want to have the Pittsburgh area. I want it to be ours, and have people be able to train with a good school wherever they live in Pittsburgh. And that's what but really it's driven by, I have guys that want to do this full time. And so I am in a position now I can help them by opening a location,
Crazy thing. My buddy lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. He's a jeweler. Wants to get into jiu-jitsu. He's like, oh, dude, your gym is in Brooklyn. I'm like, well, it's the other way around, but yeah, we're affiliated with that gym. He's like, well, I'm going to go to that gym.
Well, I know those guys really well. So the Brooklyn Henzo gym, that's something I just mentioned. Like, we were Team Henzo Gracie, and it wasn't because I bought into an association. That was my team. And It's always been my team. And not that I don't train other places. Like today, I'm supposed to go up to Map Factory.
Yeah, we're going to finish up here quick.
No, that's cool. I love those guys, and I guess Bo Nichols up there, and I'm going to work with him and one of our guys, one of our MMA fighters. I want to talk about is training there. But yeah, the Brooklyn school is awesome. It was Daniel Gracie was teaching up there for a long time. Ariel Sexton, who I met in Costa Rica, he's half Costa Rican. It was a great fighter for ONE FC. I think it's a head coach there now. So small
world.
Yeah, and it's a great place to train. If you're in Brooklyn, the Henzo Brooklyn is not only a great instructors, but just a great facility, and I'd highly recommend. I've been out there training a lot, so your buddy will be in good hands. If
I'm gonna have to go out there. And he's like, next time you come up, let's go. I'm like, for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was one over there. And he mentioned. I'm like, I'll go.
Well, tell him you train here, and they'll probably welcome you as one of their. Like you said. I mean, it is kind of our team too. And it really is. It's not like there's a lot of jiu-jitsu schools, even some locally. I'm not gonna mention their names, but they like buy into an association just because they think it'll help their marketing. Maybe it does. I don't know, but that's not why I was in this. That's just my team, and that's who I trained with.
No, and that's cool. And you mentioned the Map Factory, and when I first started jiu-jitsu in Pittsburgh, as if I did it anywhere else. When I first started jiu-jitsu, it was hard to determine what school someone was from.
Yeah,
because people just cross-train, and the jiu-jitsu community is so tight. Like for a moment, I had trouble with Siebert and Jones.
Yeah.
I'm like, which one? Like, I forget which one is from which one. And then, the more I got to know him, the more I got to meet him. I'm like, okay, Jones is that way. Siebert stout. Like,
yeah.
And I think that's such a great thing for the sport. Like, because we all train together. And then when push comes to shove, and once you're on blue and you're on red, like, you're able to go at it.
Yeah.
but then you're back at training with each other. Like that is the most beautiful thing about MMA in this sport.
Well, it is, and I think that's true, particularly with us in Map Factory. Just they're just similar values. They're skilled. They're very skilled. They're not. I mean, unfortunately, it's a spectrum, right? There's not. I wouldn't say there's fake people and not fake people, but there's a spectrum of skill and knowledge, and they're like us. I mean, they're very legitimate and great, just good coaches, good people. There are some schools that again, I don't want to mention names, but there are some schools that I don't get along with here in Pittsburgh for various reasons. But yeah, we get along great with
I would have
them.
never guessed, because anytime your name comes up, it's like, oh, Warren, man, yeah, he started this thing in Lawrenceville. Every time, no matter where I go.
Yeah.
Maybe they're lying to me because they know I go here.
No, I don't know. I mean, most of them I get along. Like I said, most of them I get along. There are a few that I don't appreciate and I don't get along with for various reasons. But that's everything. There's people that, and I would say there's different. It's like everything. There's different levels and different skills, and it's not all created equal. And that's the truth. I mean, and people might not like that. Everybody wants to create that's the thing now with social media and everything like that. Everybody wants to create a narrative, and they say this and they say that. But like the results are what matters, and I think that if you look at competitive results, which is a really good barometer, it's not the only thing. It's not the only reason you go to a jiu-jitsu school at all. But it's something to look at, right? It's something. It's a concrete thing that you can look at.
It's what you're producing.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is to some degree,
yeah.
right? There's other things too, but
yeah, absolutely.
But it is a good barometer, and if you really look at that, and not throwing anybody else under or anything, because there are other good instructors in the area, but us and Map Factory are ones that are producing competitors. Like pretty much almost
Factory,
exclusively.
They're dogs. I say this in every episode. They are dogs, man. They get after it. They're just. You see the guys who are competing, the girls who are competing out of there, and the guys and girls who are competing out of here, and they're always in. Like if you go to most tournaments, you can anticipate seeing Map Factory and seeing Stout.
Yeah,
very active, very very outgoing, very proactive, I guess, and that's important and bettering yourself too as well.
Yeah, and not just local tournaments. I mean, that's kind of more.
There he is, the next one on the episode. Will.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Will Morrow. He's been a great asset as far as like the striking. That's something it's not as much my expertise. I've trained striking and fought MMA a little bit, but really nice to have that component to our gym too, because I think it's part of mixed martial arts, and that's what we want to do. But yeah, I think that what really distinguishes us and Matt, we can win all the local tournaments just by virtue of numbers.
And
right?
Zach, we got Zach here too. Jeez, everyone.
Well, fight team practice is about to start here. We have a fight team practice on Mondays at 10:30, and it's a grappling practice, but it's all the guys come in, and I think Mike Wilkins is running it today. I usually run it when I'm around, but yeah, I think we and Map Factory too, but we've been able to compete somewhat successfully at like national and international levels, and I think that's unique in the area for the most part. I mean, there's some other good individuals and coaches and stuff like that, but as far as like a team that's consistently produced results, and that would be the other thing I would say, like business wise, just being consistent and being sustainable, right? Like I think that will take you so far in jiu-jitsu. If you're a one-man shop and you get injured or you get sick, like everybody's out of luck, right? Like that's not the case for me, and it hasn't been for a long time. Like if I have a surgery and I'm out for a while, or I get sick and whatever, or I'm traveling, like I go to Costa Rica, I run training camps there, I still go back down there a lot. I have people to keep this going, and that's so important, right? That sustainability, that consistency. As a business, you have to have that. I think.
The loyalty here is unmatched, man.
Yeah.
Like when someone's fighting, there's like 30 Stout people there to support.
Yeah.
When someone's competing, it's like groups, waves of Stout members. You've built something, and it's crazy because when I was Googling gyms to go to, obviously this one was one of the top ones that popped up. I'm gonna go check it out, and I've tried out other gyms. I was like, I'm gonna go check it out. I walked in, and it can be intimidating. Like I've fought growing up, did amateur MMA growing up, but I never really trained jiu-jitsu, consistently. And I was like, for my line of work, that's something that's very important. I got the Adopt a Cop program. I was like, I'm going to try gym, see what's up. Came in here and immediately felt like normal, welcomed.
Yeah, that's great.
I was a little late too, which I hate being late. My line of work, 15 minutes early is on time. On time is late. I show up, everyone's already in a circle.
Yeah.
Wilkins is like, you're good, come on. I'm like, damn, okay. And felt at ease. Like, I got paired with an upper belt, and I felt like weren't out to kill me, weren't out to get me, but I was like, they were kind of pushing me, and I was like, immediately, I was like, man, I think this is the gym, man. I think this is the gym, and don't regret it.
Well, that's what we want. But I'll say we have an environment that I think catches a lot of different people and a lot of different goals that people have. But it's not for everybody, right? Like there are people that weed themselves out of our culture, and that's fine. Like there are, especially now, there's all kinds of gyms in Pittsburgh that you can go to, and if it doesn't fit, that's okay. I would rather people I'd rather people try to find a legitimate place, but dude, I'd rather see them doing jiu-jitsu somewhere than nowhere,
Yeah.
So, it's not for everybody, but I think our culture, I really appreciate you saying that. I think our culture is really, really great. Do you mind? I know you're supposed to be asking a question.
No, you're good enough.
Can I ask you
back
something?
and forth? Yeah, for sure, back and forth.
So I know you've done some of the ShivWorks courses.
Yeah.
Right, with Craig.
Yes.
And this ShivWorks with Craig Douglas, I've done a lot of those as well. Not
Good
really,
dude, man.
Yeah, not an area I'm in some ways an expert in. But what did you think of his delivery? Because he has a big challenge. He's trying to deliver this material in like a weekend, right? It's an intense weekend. But what did you think of his teaching and his delivery?
He is very
And this is a self-defense
accurate,
program, right?
Accurate, like
yes, precise. I would
precise.
say with his
He's
language.
very precise with his language and why he does things, his training approach, and he tells you. And it's funny because like he posts videos online, right? And they don't give you the full picture.
Yeah,
You look at these videos and you're
not
like,
at all.
what is he talking about? But when you do his class, so the last ShivWorks was 3 days of 12-hour days.
Yeah.
So
it's
intense. And at the end of every training,
Was that a law enforcement only? The one that you
Yeah,
did? It was.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think I came out to that, but I didn't participate at all. Just kind of looked and.
it's there's the sunshine herself. Everyone's coming in.
Oh, this
I'm
fight team
honored,
practice. Yeah, you should. Anytime you want to come in and join us for that, you
I
can.
might have to. So at the end is an evolution, and we call it the murder wall.
Yeah.
But for civilian world, you can't call it that. The evolution, and everyone gets in a circle, and two people come in, and you get a scenario. Like the one was, the police officer started with their hands on the wall, and the evolution started when someone started punching you from behind.
Yeah.
And you had to turn around, defend yourself, and manage the situation. So after a 12-hour day, you're now getting put into a full scenario. I think his delivery with everything is very precise in the sense of he tells you exactly what you're in for. He tells you how to manage things, and you can question his material. He actually opens with, if you have any questions, any discrepancies, whatever, like let me know. We'll work through stuff. You can film everything. He just asks you, like, this is how I make my living. I ask that you just don't post it.
Yeah.
Like, don't post it all. But if you're gonna post little things, sure, whatever. But just respect what I do. Kind of like, if someone came in here and recording our practices,
Yeah.
if you're taking that home to learn, cool.
Same.
If you're
I
gonna
feel the same. Yeah.
post it to like try to monetize it, like this is what we do for a living. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that. But he's very precise with his stuff. And when I came into Anti-Fragile, he runs it the same way. Obviously, you have to dial it down a little bit because you're getting
It's a different group. It's
a
not
different group, yeah.
like you guys, like law enforcement stuff. And that's Sean Lupka. He does Craig Douglas.
he does his civilian curriculum.
Yeah, and we have the oldest training group, and some of them it's a civilian curriculum, but there is law enforcement in the classes often and stuff, and other people military people and stuff. But yeah, he's done a great job, and we're Craig's oldest consistent training group in the country.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till last year. So I'm like, what's this Anti-Fragile? What's this Anti-Fragile? Well, I started talking with him, and he's like, dude, you do Craig's classes. I'm one of his instructors. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. So I would come when I can because I work every other Thursday, and then Kids class is usually Thursday, so I'll bring my daughter and then go. And I'm like, yo, this is this. You have an hour
Yeah.
to do it, but like, I'm like, this is similar stuff that we do in his classes.
Yeah.
Less intense.
Yeah.
But it's the same stuff. And like the goal is if everyone of the same group keeps coming, the intensity starts building. Because now I look at the stuff they're doing and I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff we're doing. That's the same stuff we're doing in Craig's class for the most part.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's good stuff. No, I think he's a very good instructor. Not to hype Mike up, but Mike has similar philosophy instructions. Very clear, very concise. Very no bushido. You know,
Yeah.
he tells you this is why I teach this way. It's simple, it's easily applicable, and under stress, you'll be able to resort to it.
Yeah.
Like it's not like some crazy. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then you disarm.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're gonna get stabbed.
Yeah.
We're gonna limit how many times you get stabbed,
Yeah.
and that's true.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you what you thought of it, because I feel the same way. And I think that, he has this limited time to teach. It's not, and you train jiu-jitsu also and have other experience, and that's an asset to that training. But you can't take somebody that doesn't do jiu-jitsu or doesn't train consistently and give them the same thing. They're not going to be you, but they might be able to be effective after Craig's thing. They might be able to be more effective than they were, right?
So he actually mentioned in the one, he's like, hey, I'm a black belt. My instructors are black belts. We train jiu-jitsu, but this is not a jiu-jitsu match. He's
Yeah.
like, use your jiu-jitsu, but don't play jiu-jitsu. He always says that.
Yeah.
And that always sticks with me because it's true. Like people say, oh, you do jiu-jitsu, that's not real world. No, it is.
Yeah.
No, it is. It is. If you can apply it, it is.
Yeah.
It's your. The more you learn jiu-jitsu, the more you're able to apply it. Like if you're new in jiu-jitsu and you go fight someone with a knife, you're not going to have the principles of controlling arms, controlling limbs. You're not going to know all that yet. So you can't really apply your jiu-jitsu. But someone like you, Mike, who's been doing jiu-jitsu for a decade or more, your jiu-jitsu is more applicable than my jiu-jitsu would be, which is why I try to train multifaceted early on so that I can easily apply myself rather than doing 10 years of jiu-jitsu and then applying it. I'm like slower in the world, but I'm like I do combatives, I do DT. I actually lead our department's combatives classes. And we train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
The majority of us train jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is an important part in having the basis and foundation to be able to apply yourself to one of Craig's classes. But that being said, he goes, you don't need to know jiu-jitsu. You don't need to know anything because everything I'm teaching you, you can take.
Yeah. I think that's cool that he was able to put that together. And I think that also, kind of touches on jiu-jitsu's, there are different emphasis on jiu-jitsu, right? Like you can, it's almost like the fundamental movements are the same. And I always say that for our fundamentals curriculum, like there is a base of jiu-jitsu, that the core philosophies, the core movements, that you can break down. But in addition to that, if your goal is to to be great in IBJJF gi competition, or your goal is to be the most effective law enforcement officer you can be, those are very different jiu-jitsus. The base movements are going to be like our fundamentals curriculum, the same. But as you get more advanced, it's going to separate a little bit what the emphasis is, what the parameters of the environment are, and things like that. And that goes for other things too. I mean, we talk about you had a lot of the MMA fighters on. Their emphasis is much different than, for example, like let's say Lucas Siebert, although he trains with Christian a lot, we can train together with the different groups. Their emphasis is much different. Christian Schaefer's, much more focused on no-gi, ADCC type style competition. Lucas is an MMA fighter, so going to be a lot different, right? So yeah, I think that's something that I've thought a lot about, and people should take note. And we have paths for a lot of those different goals in Stout, which I like. That's something I'm proud of.
I do agree with that. I mean, you guys offer a lot, Muay Thai. You even have aerial, what's that called?
Yeah, aerial silks.
Yeah, everything.
My wife started that program in Zealy. You
think I could try it? Does it hold that much?
Yeah. It'd be tough. It's tough. I've tried a little bit of it.
No, I couldn't do that. It's a lot of.
It's fun, and it is a great workout. She's really, she's 43 too, and she decided to. I think we just lost our battery.
That one's still going.
Oh, okay. But she started that, and just she's a mom. We have two children, and she's in her 40s, and she about 5 years ago, she just really got into it. Took still does private lessons all the time, and started that program, and it's growing well too, and it's a lot of people like it. It just adds something. It's just something else that people can do in the community. Like, I know some of the coaches, fiancés and girlfriends train that, and it's something that some people use as like a little bit of cross training, stretch out. It's a fun program, but that's something we do try to offer. We have a lot of little extras we try to offer at Stout.
I will say this, going back to that jiu-jitsu as a foundation. One of my evolutions, I had to start on the ground on my back, and there was someone on top of me. And the goal was for me to get up. If I didn't get up in 6 seconds, another guy with a knife was coming.
I've done that drill.
Yeah, sucks, man.
Yeah.
It sucks, because you're like, I got to stand up, which jiu-jitsu is amazing. But especially in law enforcement, you don't want to be on the ground.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself on the ground, jiu-jitsu is beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and I was going against a black belt.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, this is gonna suck for me. And Craig in the beginning goes, remember, don't play jiu-jitsu. In my mind, I'm like, I don't want to play jiu-jitsu against this guy. He's a black belt.
Yeah.
Well, he tried to play jiu-jitsu. So he says, go, and he immediately goes to wrap my legs. I don't know why. He was supposed to be punching me, but I was so glad. He started to punch me, and I just framed, right?
Yeah.
Something you learn in fundamentals. And as he starts pushing into me, I'm using the frame to be able to stand up. And I'm able to stand up, and then he keeps aggressing me, so I pull out my sim, and I shoot him 6 times along the face. And then Craig, being Craig, sends the other guy anyway. So now I'm fighting this dude still.
But you have your sim gun.
Well, we only had 6.
Oh, you only had 6 shots.
And I gave him every single one, thinking all right, I passed the drill.
Yeah.
No, he's like, oh, you passed the drill? That doesn't. You're supposed to fail the drill. Sends the other guy anyway. So now this other guy comes. He's stabbing me, and I'm a big dude, so I just wrap him up. This other guy now has my legs. We fall to the ground, and then he calls time, and I'm like, that sucked. But fundamental jiu-jitsu allowed me to apply that. If I didn't know jiu-jitsu, I would have not known the frame.
Yeah.
I would have panicked. I would have, and jiu-jitsu teaches you to remain calm. It teaches you to think under pressure, because jiu-jitsu is one big puzzle, one big game.
That's my favorite part of it.
Yeah, it allows you to process multiple things at one time while being silent. I talked about this in which episode was it? Last episode, another one down. But I talked about it on the 247 podcast. Jiu-jitsu quiets your mind.
Yeah.
It quiets your mind. You're not thinking about bills. You're not thinking about whatever's happening out there, because there's a problem you have to solve right now.
Yeah, and that problem's going to consume all the focus you have, and you still might not solve it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it's these crazy dynamic problems that you get into in jiu-jitsu that's what makes it fun. I always say there's 3 main reasons people get into doing any of these sports that we do. One of them is for self-defense, right? That's a common reason. Another one's for fitness, and another one is just because it's a fun game. It's a fun puzzle. That you get to try to solve every day, this dynamic puzzle. And then people stay in because of their friends and stuff. There's other reasons you stay in, but that's why people get into it. For me, I think, it's always a mix of those 3 reasons. I think for most people, the number one thing that keeps me in it, other than the friendships and stuff, and that's my livelihood and my business, is that puzzle. It's always evolving. If you learn jiu-jitsu 7 years ago and you haven't figured out new puzzles and evolved with jiu-jitsu, you're left behind.
You're stale.
Yeah, you're
getting stale.
Yeah, and I love that. Some people might not like that because it's you're always
you
running
can never
on the treadmill.
complete it.
No, there's never an end. There's never an end to the path because everybody's evolving it. Everybody else is evolving it. You have to evolve with it. But I love that. I embrace. That's my favorite thing.
I would say it's also huge for mental health. Because of all these things you said, fitness, awesome for mental health.
Yeah.
Always having your brain stimulated, great for mental health. The relationships and community you become a part of, great for mental health.
Strong relationships.
Strong
right?
relationships, yeah. I would say that's huge, and I think that jiu-jitsu has played a role in like helping the community. Growing up, I didn't have anything to keep me busy, so I got into a lot of trouble. And it wasn't until like I started doing sports and started doing something like that. And I think having a gym like this, especially in the city, and big spots in the city, like I don't know if you see it or not. I think it helps pull a lot of those people who are dealing with stuff at home. They can come through these doors, and I'm one of those people. I battle through a lot of like depression. When I come in through these doors, none of that matters.
Yeah.
I leave on a super high. Even if I get kicked, I'm like, I leave. I literally get in my car and I'm like, damn, dude,
Yeah.
I'm sweating. I'm like, I got trashed today. I want to go to the gym. Like it's like I want to go do. I want to go do more. Like, oh man, like should I stay for open mat? No, I got to go home. Like, but then I go home and I'm feeling good. Because like I chatted it up with the friends, and then we rolled, and then like it's like this good feeling you get, and it's like runner's high.
Yeah.
You ever heard that? Like
Yeah,
you run
yeah.
for
Oh,
so
yeah,
long,
for
it
sure.
sucks, and then you reach this point where you're like, you can go all day.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with jiu-jitsu, and I don't know if you've even noticed that or something like that, but it's huge with mental health. Like people come in here, quiet their lives, quiet their minds, and it's like it's just you and me.
I have had a lot of people express that to me, and in different ways too. Like I've had the young 20-something, let's say military vet that says this has really been something that's taken a lot of my trauma or my stress. I've had the 50s, mid 50s executive who just had something bad happen in his life tell me this takes their mind off that. It gives them that peace so in all different facets of that, different types of people. We have such diversity in here too. That's what I love about this. Like again, it's not for everybody. Our culture isn't for everybody, but we are very diverse. I mean, there's people from we probably have over 30 different countries represented across this places. Where you grew up here? Where'd you grow up? Where was
I grew up Erie, but I'm from Puerto Rico.
Okay, yeah. That's why I thought you had a
Jiu-jitsu's
background
becoming huge over there too.
Yeah, Puerto Rico, and like my wife's from Costa Rica, and we have a lot of people from Latin America here. We have we'll have Jewish people and Arab people training together on the same mat, and that's not like because we tried to make that happen or something. I had a YMCA director for a big YMCA visit us, and she was amazed at the diversity just randomly on our mats, and I love that. I think it's people from, it's not for everybody, but people from all walks of life. Rich people, poor people, different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, all kinds
Different
of people.
industries.
Different industries.
Oil and gas, law enforcement.
Yeah.
You have, Christian out of high school.
Yeah.
Lucas, who's like, this is my life. This
Yeah.
is what I'm gonna do. Like all kinds of realtors. Like I rolled with someone, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you're from the McCandless office." I'm like, "Scared me too." I'm like, "Damn, I didn't even know that." Like it just you get like it pulls everyone in.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not for everybody, but everyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone can do it. That being said, I'm gonna let you get to the Math Factory. Go train with Bo. I appreciate you for jumping on, man. It's been
I was again. It really is an honor for me because I think you do such a great job, and it really helps promote this organization that I love. And I think you're doing a great job of promoting it. I want to put it out. We have a bunch of things we didn't get to talk about. A lot of things that
that we could talk for hours.
for sure. And I'd love to be on again if you ever want to have me.
Please.
I'd like to talk. One thing I do want to mention is some of our competitors coming up. Yeah, you mentioned I'm supposed to go up to Map Factory, and Isaac said Bo Nickel, the great wrestler and now MMA fighters up there training. And I sent one of my guys, Farman Hasnov, up there. He's making his pro debut in January. He's a phenomenal MMA talent.
Has he been matched yet?
He does. We haven't signed a contract, so I don't want to say anything about it. But
makes sense.
he, I think we do have a matchup, and then we have Lucas making his pro debut. Brittany's making her pro debut. Really excited. The fight team has ebbed and flowed over the 14 years. We've had really high periods and periods where it's kind of low. And now we're on the upswing. So that's something to if you're a Pittsburgh MMA fan, good things coming. You'll get a lot of people to watch, and
it's only getting better too. I'm so excited. Brittany's December 16th. I'm gonna be there. I got tables. I got little courtside tables. So ringside table,
or cage side in this case.
Cage side.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm happy about that, and I'm excited for what Stout is. I've been watching the fight team.
Yeah.
Not creepily, but I've been watching, and I'm excited for what we got going on and what we're producing here.
Well, me too. And you can follow us. I'm not a huge social media person. I kind of have mixed feelings about that too. But I can follow us on social media. We try to keep do a good job. It's at Stout PGH on all. We have it on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. At Stout PGH, and we post a lot of stuff there, as well as some of our other pages. If you're interested, we have a page for our fight team. It's Stout Fight Team. We have a page for our events, Stout Fights. That's on social media also, and that's our jiu-jitsu, our Thai boxing, and we've had an MMA event there too. We have you can follow us also. Just our websites are good. If you're interested in checking out more about us, our website's stoutpgh.com. It's all the same stuff. I have a camp in Costa Rica that I do. That's Pura Vida Jiu-Jitsu Camp. We're planning on one this winter, so or late winter or early spring this year. It's another social media site you guys can follow. And that's thanks again for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. I'm gonna have to get you back on here. We got a lot to talk about.
I feel like we just got started. So
I need to find out how Joe Rogan does his podcast, because they're like 3 hours long. My batteries don't last, so we're gonna figure it out.
Well,
it's all a learning curve.
There's like, and I kind of feel bad, but I haven't gotten to talk to you as much as I'd like to. And even though this is like kind of a formal podcast kind of thing, I just feel like there's a bunch of stuff I want to ask you about too.
No, for sure. We can bounce back always.
Maybe we'll do another one, and now, I can
interview me.
Some stuff a little bit. Yeah. So that'd be cool.
I appreciate you, Warren. It's the one with Warren Stout. Later.
You've been listening to the Relentless Project. Ish Lopez grew up in the heart of the inner city, but he managed to build multiple income streams, join the ranks of law enforcement, and dive into countless ventures, all thanks to the incredible relationships he forged along the way. And now his passion is to share those stories with you. Make sure to connect with us on social media. Find Ish on Twitter and Instagram at the Ish Lopez, and the show at Relentless PRJCT. We're on all the major streaming platforms, from Spotify to Apple Podcast and Google Podcasts, and wherever you like to catch your favorite shows. See you next time on the Relentless Project.